I sat in that cold courthouse facing my own parents across the aisle, their lawyer shuffling papers with satisfaction. I stared at the legal documents claiming my dream home. The Victorian house I saved 7 years to buy rightfully belongs to my younger sister, Jessica. My mother refused eye contact while my father glared with disappointment. The judge called the case. As I stood, my hands trembling, I realized this moment would either destroy my family forever or finally expose the truth I had suspected for years. Walking into that courtroom felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while I watched my parents treat me like a criminal. 6 months earlier, everything seemed perfect in my world. I remember the day I signed those closing papers like it was yesterday. At 32, I finally purchased my dream Victorian home on Maple Street after 7 years of relentless saving. Every penny counted during those years working as a physical therapist. I skipped vacations, drove my beat-up Honda until the wheels nearly fell off, and ate ramen noodles more nights than I care to admit. But that house with its wraparound porch, original hardwood floors, and stained glass windows was worth every sacrifice. The excitement bubbled inside me as I called my parents to share the good news. Robert and Linda had always been supportive, or so I thought. I expected celebration champagne toasts, maybe even tears of pride. Instead, cold silence filled the phone line. "You had no right to buy that house without asking us first." My mother's sharp voice cut through my joy like a knife. Confusion washed over me. I had used my own money, my own credit, my own down payment earned through years of hard work. Why would I need permission to purchase a home with my own resources? "Mom, I don't understand. This is my money, my investment." "That house was promised to Jessica. You've ruined everything." Jessica, my 28-year-old sister who had never held a steady job longer than 6 months. The perpetual golden child who floated through life while I worked myself to exhaustion. Childhood memories flooded back Jessica receiving a brand new Jeep for her 16th birthday while I worked at Murphy's grocery store to buy my own used sedan. College years when Jessica's tuition, room, and board were fully paid by our parents while I graduated with $30,000 in student loans. The pattern continued into adulthood. Jessica lived rent-free in our parents' basement, her room decorated like a teenager's, despite approaching 30. Meanwhile, I paid $800 monthly for my modest apartment across town. When Jessica needed money for designer clothes or spa treatments, our parents opened their wallets. When I needed help with emergency dental work last year, I was told money was tight. "What promise?" I demanded during that awful phone conversation. I've never heard anything about Jessica getting that specific house. "Jessica deserves a nice home." My father's voice boomed through the speaker. "She's been going through a hard time with another breakup. You've ruined her future by being selfish." Selfish. The word stung because I had spent my entire life being the responsible daughter. While Jessica partied through her 20s, I built a career helping people recover from injuries and trauma. While she collected unemployment between jobs, I worked overtime shifts to afford my own apartment. While she dated a string of losers who broke her heart repeatedly, I focused on building financial stability. How exactly did I ruin anything? The house was publicly listed. I made a legitimate offer with my own money. "Don't get smart with us, young lady," my mother snapped. "Jessica has been promised everything she needs since birth because she's special. You've always been stronger, more capable. Jessica needs protection." That conversation planted the first seed of suspicion. What made Jessica special beyond being the younger child? Why did my independence somehow make me less deserving of family support? Questions multiplied in my mind, but answers remained elusive. 2 weeks later, certified mail arrived at my apartment. Marcus Coleman, a family attorney and longtime friend of my parents, had filed a lawsuit claiming I somehow used family money to purchase the house. The legal terminology was confusing, but the intent was clear. They wanted my house transferred to Jessica. The lawsuit cited unjust enrichment and breach of family trust. According to the documents, my parents claimed I had violated some verbal family contract by purchasing property that rightfully belonged to Jessica. They demanded the deed be transferred to my sister along with reimbursement for legal fees. Reading those papers felt surreal. My own parents were attempting to legally steal my home based on some imaginary promise they claimed existed. I had saved every dollar qualified for the mortgage independently and purchased the property through legitimate channels. Yet, somehow in their minds, the house belonged to Jessica. The final confrontation before filing their lawsuit happened at our childhood home. I drove to their ranch-style house in the suburbs, hoping rational conversation might resolve this madness. Jessica answered the door wearing designer clothes I recognized from expensive boutiques. "This whole situation is really hurting my mental health," she said without greeting. "I had my heart set on that house. Mom and Dad promised it would be mine when it came available." Since when do our parents control real estate purchases for adult children? "Since I'm special and deserve nice things. You've always been the strong one, Amy. I need more help because life is harder for me." Her entitlement was staggering. No acknowledgement of my 7 years of sacrifice, no recognition of the effort required to afford such a purchase. In Jessica's world, wanting something was sufficient justification for receiving it. My parents emerged from the kitchen, their faces set in grim determination. My father, a retired postal worker who had built a modest hardware store into a successful business, looked at me with profound disappointment. My mother, who had worked as a school secretary for 30 years, avoided eye contact entirely. "We raised you better than this," my father said. "Family comes first always. Jessica needs that house more than you do." "She's never even had a full-time job, Dad. How would she afford the mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance?" "We'll help her, obviously. That's what family does." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. They would mortgage their own financial security to give Jessica a house she couldn't afford while treating my legitimate purchase as some act of betrayal. I had followed every rule, worked for everything I owned, and built my life through personal responsibility. Yet somehow, I was the villain in their story. During our heated exchange, my father made a comment that changed everything. "Jessica has been promised everything she needs since birth because she's special. She's always been our priority." "What makes Jessica so special?" I asked pointedly. My parents exchanged a meaningful look, the kind of silent communication that passes between people sharing a significant secret. My mother's face paled, while my father clenched his jaw. "That's not your concern," my mother whispered. But their reaction told me everything I needed to know. There was a family secret involving Jessica, something that explained decades of preferential treatment. Their refusal to answer my simple question left me with a chilling realization I had never truly known my own family's history. The lawsuit was their nuclear option, but it also became my opportunity to uncover the truth about why Jessica had always been considered more deserving than me. My determination to understand what made Jessica special consumed every spare moment. If my parents wanted to wage legal warfare over my house, I would arm myself with knowledge about my own family's secrets. Diana Porter became my first ally in this battle. A sharp family law specialist with 20 years of experience, she took my case after hearing the bizarre circumstances. During our initial consultation in her downtown office, she shook her head with disbelief. "I've seen plenty of family disputes over money and property," Diana said, reviewing the lawsuit documents. "But parents suing their own daughter for buying a house with her own money, that's a new one." Legal discovery opened fascinating windows into my family's financial arrangements. Diana's investigation revealed a pattern of monetary support for Jessica that staggered me. Bank records showed consistent monthly transfers totaling over $80,000 in just 5 years. My parents had been secretly funding Jessica's lifestyle while I struggled to save every penny for my house. The transfers weren't small emergency loans between family members. These were substantial monthly payments ranging from $800 to $1,500, essentially providing Jessica with a full salary for doing nothing. Restaurant charges, clothing purchases, spa treatments, car payments, my parents had been bankrolling Jessica's entire existence. Your parents have been treating Jessica like a dependent child rather than an adult, Diana observed. This level of financial support suggests either extreme enabling or some underlying obligation they feel toward her. My next stop was Grandma Helen, my father's 80-year-old mother who lived in a senior community across town. Helen had always been the family historian, maintaining photo albums and remembering every birthday anniversary and milestone. If anyone knew family secrets, it would be her. Helen's apartment was exactly what I expected: floral furniture, religious figurines, and walls covered with family photographs spanning 60 years. She welcomed me with homemade cookies and instant coffee, settling into her favorite armchair with practiced ease. "I don't like discussing old family business," Helen said cautiously when I brought up Jessica's special status. "Some things are better left buried." But persistence and gentle questioning gradually loosened her tongue. Helen revealed that Jessica was born during a family crisis. My father had lost his postal job due to budget cuts, my mother was battling severe depression, and their marriage was hanging by a thread. "Jessica was a blessing that saved the marriage," Helen said carefully. "Your parents were so grateful to have her join the family during such a difficult time." Her phrasing struck me as odd. Join the family. Why not say born into the family? "Grandma, what do you mean by join the family?" Helen's face flushed, and she fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Oh, you know what I mean, dear. Babies bring families together." But I pressed further, sensing her discomfort held important information. Helen eventually made a comment that stopped my heart. "Jessica's baby pictures always looked so different from the others. Different coloring, different features. But love makes a family not blood." My mind raced with implications. Different features could mean many things, but combined with Helen's careful language about Jessica joining the family, a disturbing possibility emerged. That evening, I drove to my childhood home while my parents were at their weekly bridge game. Using my old house key, I slipped inside and went straight to my former bedroom where family documents were stored in cardboard boxes. Most boxes contain typical family memorabilia, report cards, school photos, insurance policies, but buried in a box labeled "Important Papers," I found documents that shattered my understanding of our family history. Adoption papers. Not for me, as I initially feared, but for Jessica. Hospital records showed my mother's difficult pregnancy that ended in miscarriage at 7 months. The baby girl they had planned to name Jessica Marie never took her first breath. But 3 weeks later, different Jessica Marie joined our family through private adoption arranged by a lawyer friend. The paperwork was thorough and legal, but clearly confidential. My parents had adopted Jessica as an infant, then apparently decided to keep the adoption secret from everyone, including Jessica herself and extended family. They had grieved their biological daughter's death privately while welcoming adopted Jessica as their second chance at completing their family. Suddenly, everything made sense. The overprotective behavior, the financial enabling, the constant references to Jessica being special and deserving extra care. My parents weren't just raising an adopted daughter, they were compensating for their loss by trying to give Jessica everything their biological daughter would have received. But this revelation raised new questions. Did Jessica know about her adoption? Had she always known, or was this information hidden from her too? And why did my parents' guilt about Jessica's adoption translate into treating me, their biological daughter, as less deserving of love and support? I decided to confront Jessica directly, hoping shared knowledge might help us resolve the house situation like adults. I drove to my parents' house the next evening when I knew they would be at their weekly grocery shopping. Jessica answered the door in silk pajamas at 7 in the evening, looking like she had spent the day lounging around the house. Her entitled attitude was immediately apparent. "I hope you came to apologize and discuss transferring the house deed," she said without invitation into the house. Actually, I came to talk about family history, specifically your adoption. Jessica's reaction surprised me. Instead of shock or confusion, she laughed with genuine amusement. You finally figured it out. I've known since I was 16. Found the papers in Mom's bedroom when I was looking for birthday money in her jewelry box. My jaw dropped. Jessica had known about her adoption for 12 years and never mentioned it to anyone, including our parents. If you've known all along, why haven't you told Mom and Dad? Jessica's smile turned predatory. Because their guilt is useful. They feel so bad about keeping the adoption secret that they give me whatever I want. The monthly allowance, the credit cards paying my bills, all because they think I'm fragile and need extra protection. The calculating coldness in her voice chilled me. Jessica wasn't a confused young woman struggling with identity issues. She was a master manipulator who had been deliberately exploiting our parents' emotions for over a decade. The house lawsuit is just the beginning, Jessica continued casually. I've been positioning myself to inherit everything when they pass away. The will was changed 3 years ago to give me the primary inheritance. You get sentimental items and $5,000. My blood ran cold. Jessica had been systematically manipulating our parents' estate planning while I focused on building my own independent life. She revealed this information with the casual cruelty of someone who enjoyed having power over others. Why are you telling me this? Because you can't stop it. Mom and Dad will never believe their precious adopted daughter is capable of manipulation. They see me as their innocent child who needs protection from the harsh world. Meanwhile, strong, capable Amy can take care of herself. Jessica's plan was diabolical in its simplicity. She had weaponized our parents' guilt about her adoption to secure financial advantages, then used their protective instincts to justify increasingly demanding behavior. The house lawsuit wasn't about real estate. It was about establishing legal precedent that Jessica's wants superseded my rights. As I drove home that night, I realized the court case had become about much more than my Victorian house. I was fighting for my parents' financial survival and my own right to be treated as an equal member of the family. Jessica's manipulation would eventually destroy my parents financially while poisoning every family relationship with lies and exploitation. But Jessica had made one critical mistake by revealing her knowledge and intentions. Now I had the information needed to expose her manipulation and protect my parents from their own misguided generosity. The real battle was just beginning. Jessica's cold revelation about her calculated manipulation opened my eyes to a conspiracy far more sinister than a simple housing dispute. If she had been systematically positioning herself to inherit everything while exploiting our parents' guilt, I needed to understand the full scope of her financial manipulation. Diana Porter's deeper investigation revealed disturbing patterns that made my stomach churn. Jessica hadn't just been receiving monthly allowances, she had convinced our parents to co-sign multiple credit cards and personal loans in her name. The financial liability extended far beyond the $80,000 in direct transfers. Your parents are on the hook for over $120,000 in Jessica's debt, Diana explained during our emergency meeting. Credit cards, personal loans, even a car loan for that luxury sedan she drives. They've been making minimum payments on her accounts for years. The scope of financial manipulation was breathtaking. While I had been saving every penny for my house, Jessica had been racking up massive debt that my parents were legally obligated to repay. Department store cards, jewelry financing, vacation loans. Jessica had been living a lifestyle funded entirely by our parents' credit and retirement savings. But the most shocking discovery came when Diana investigated my father's hardware store. Robert's Hardware had been a modestly successful family business for 20 years, providing my parents with comfortable middle-class income and retirement security. Diana's forensic accountant found that the business was hemorrhaging money. Your father has taken multiple business loans against the store's assets, Diana reported grimly. The proceeds weren't used for business improvements or expansion. Bank records show large cash withdrawals that correspond exactly with Jessica's spending sprees. I drove to the hardware store that afternoon, seeing it with new eyes. The familiar aisles of tools, paint, and garden supplies looked the same, but I noticed subtle signs of financial stress. Inventory seemed lighter than usual, the staff had been reduced, and my father looked exhausted behind the cash register. "Dad, we need to talk about the business finances." Robert's face immediately closed off. "That's not your concern, Amy. The store is doing fine." But his defensive tone and the way he avoided eye contact told a different story. My successful, hardworking father was drowning in debt created by Jessica's manipulation, too proud to admit he had been systematically enabling her financial destruction of the family. Diana's investigation uncovered even more disturbing evidence. Jessica had recently met with an estate planning attorney without my parents' knowledge, attempting to convince the lawyer that Robert and Linda were developing early-stage dementia and needed financial guardianship. "The plan was to gain power of attorney over your parents' finances," Diana explained. "Complete control over their assets, bank accounts, and property decisions. The only reason it failed was because their family doctor wouldn't support the dementia claim." Jessica's manipulation had evolved beyond simple financial exploitation. She was attempting to gain legal control over our parents' entire estate while they were still alive and mentally competent. The House lawsuit was just one piece of a larger puzzle designed to strip our parents of their autonomy and financial security. I began reaching out to family friends and community members, discovering that Jessica's manipulation extended beyond our immediate family. Mrs. Patterson from church revealed that Jessica had borrowed $3,000 6 months ago for emergency medical treatment that never actually occurred. The Hendersons next door mentioned loaning Jessica $1,500 for car repairs that were apparently never needed. "We felt so sorry for that sweet girl," Mrs. Patterson explained. "She said your parents couldn't help because they were struggling financially. We didn't want to burden Robert and Linda by asking for repayment." Jessica had been running a sophisticated con game throughout our community, using variations of sob stories to extract money from trusting neighbors and family friends. She portrayed our parents as financially stressed while simultaneously draining their resources, creating a narrative that justified her need for outside financial assistance. The most disturbing discovery came from Marcus, a longtime employee at my father's hardware store. He had been documenting Jessica's visits for months after noticing discrepancies in the cash register. "She comes in when your dad is busy with customers," Marcus explained quietly. "Takes money directly from the register, usually $40 or $60 at a time. I've seen her do it at least 20 times in the past 6 months." Jessica was literally stealing cash from our family business while also manipulating our parents into paying her bills and funding her lifestyle. The theft was brazen and ongoing, conducted with the confidence of someone who knew she wouldn't be questioned or held accountable. But the piece de resistance of Jessica's manipulation was discovered through Diana's real estate investigation. Jessica had been secretly meeting with a commercial development company interested in purchasing our parents' property for a strip mall project. "She's been forging your mother's signature on preliminary documents," Diana said, showing me photocopied contracts. The plan was to force the sale of their home by creating a financial crisis that required immediate liquidation of assets. Jessica had orchestrated our parents' debt problems specifically to create desperation that would justify selling the family home. The development company was offering significantly above market value for the property, but the contract listed Jessica as the primary beneficiary of the proceeds. During court-mandated mediation, all these revelations came to a head. The mediator, an experienced family law specialist named Judge Catherine Mills, grew increasingly concerned as Diana presented evidence of Jessica's financial manipulation. "Ms. Jessica," Judge Mills asked pointedly, "how do you explain your detailed knowledge of your parents' business finances and real estate holdings?" Jessica's confident mask began slipping as the questions became more specific. She stumbled through explanations about helping with family bookkeeping, but her answers revealed information she shouldn't have possessed. "I deserve everything because I'm the one who saved this family," Jessica snapped when pressed about the forged documents. "They were falling apart before I was adopted. I gave them purpose and happiness. Everything they have should belong to me because I'm the reason they stayed together." The room fell silent. Jessica had inadvertently revealed her knowledge of the adoption while simultaneously exposing her sense of entitlement to our parents' assets. My parents sat frozen, realizing that their carefully guarded secret was known to both daughters and that Jessica had been manipulating their guilt for years. "Young lady," Judge Mills said sternly, "are you claiming that adoption gives you superior inheritance rights over your parents' biological daughter?" Jessica's fury erupted. "She doesn't deserve anything. I'm the special one, the one they chose, the one they needed. Amy was just an accident, but I was wanted and planned and saved their marriage." The mediation room exploded into chaos as all our family secrets spilled into the open. My parents were devastated to learn that Jessica had known about the adoption for years while manipulating their emotions. Jessica was furious at losing her primary weapon of guilt and victimhood. And I finally understood that I had been fighting not just for my house, but for my right to be treated as an equal member of my own family. The mediator recommended immediate criminal investigation based on Jessica's admissions of forgery and theft. But more importantly, the truth was finally exposed, shifting the entire power dynamic in ways that would change our family forever. Armed with devastating evidence of Jessica's criminal behavior, I faced the most difficult decision of my life. Exposing Jessica's fraud and theft would devastate my parents, but allowing her manipulation to continue would destroy them financially and emotionally. Diana Porter recommended filing counterclaims against Jessica for fraud, theft, forgery, and elder financial abuse. The criminal charges would likely result in prison time, but they might also save my parents from complete financial ruin. "Your parents are victims of sophisticated manipulation," Diana explained. "But if we don't act quickly, Jessica will successfully transfer all their assets to herself and leave them destitute in their retirement years." The decision to proceed with criminal charges felt like betraying my own family, even though I knew Jessica's behavior was destroying us from within. I spent sleepless nights weighing the consequences of exposing Jessica's crimes against the damage her continued manipulation would cause. My investigation gained unexpected allies throughout our community. Marcus from the hardware store agreed to testify about Jessica's theft from the cash register. Patricia, our longtime bank manager, provided detailed financial records showing the pattern of manipulated transactions. Dr. Richardson, our family physician, confirmed that Jessica's claimed medical emergencies and chronic conditions were unsupported by any clinical evidence. "Jessica has been in my office dozens of times claiming various ailments," Dr. Richardson explained. "Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, anxiety disorders that conveniently flare up whenever she needs documentation for financial assistance. I've run extensive tests over the years and found no medical basis for her complaints." The medical manipulation was perhaps the most cruel aspect of Jessica's deception. She had weaponized our parents' love and concern by faking illnesses that justified expensive treatments, therapy sessions, and alternative medicine approaches. Thousands of dollars had been spent on medical care for conditions that existed only in Jessica's imagination. Pastor Williams from our family church provided additional evidence of Jessica's manipulation. She had approached multiple congregation members with requests for financial assistance, always claiming that our parents were unable to help due to their own financial struggles. "Jessica told Mrs. Morrison that your father's business was failing and they couldn't afford her medical expenses," Pastor Williams said sadly. "The congregation took up a collection that raised $2,700. We thought we were helping a family in crisis, not enabling someone's lies." The scope of Jessica's deception was staggering. She had created an elaborate fiction portraying our parents as struggling financially while simultaneously draining their resources. The lies allowed her to extract money from community members while maintaining the image of a devoted daughter facing health crises through no fault of her own. But Diana's investigation revealed Jessica's most ambitious scheme yet. Security footage from a real estate office showed Jessica meeting repeatedly with commercial developers interested in our parents' property. She had been negotiating the sale of their home without their knowledge, using forged power of attorney documents to represent herself as their legal guardian. The development contract was already drafted with Jessica listed as the sole beneficiary, Diana revealed during our strategy session. She planned to force your parents into assisted living by claiming they couldn't manage their finances, then sell the family home for commercial development. Jessica's endgame was complete control over our parents' lives and assets. The House lawsuit against me was designed to establish legal precedent that Jessica's desires superseded my parents' actual wishes. Once she gained that foothold, she would systematically strip them of their autonomy and independence. I decided to attempt one final direct conversation with my parents before escalating to criminal charges. I invited them to lunch at Romano's, the family restaurant where we had celebrated birthdays and anniversaries throughout my childhood. The familiar red checkered tablecloths and smell of garlic bread brought back memories of happier times when our family felt genuine and loving. "Mom, Dad, I need to show you something important," I said, spreading bank statements and financial documents across the table between our salads. The evidence was undeniable. Monthly transfers to Jessica's accounts, business loans used to fund her lifestyle, forged signatures on legal documents, theft from the hardware store register. I presented each piece methodically, hoping facts would penetrate their emotional defenses. My father's face grew pale as he recognized his own signature forged on documents he had never seen. My mother's hands trembled as she calculated the total amount of money that had been systematically stolen from their retirement savings. "Jessica loves us," my mother whispered, as if saying the words could make them true. "She wouldn't deliberately hurt us. She's just confused about finances." "Linda," my father said, quietly studying a document showing Jessica's attempt to claim guardianship, "this isn't confusion. This is planning." But even confronted with overwhelming evidence, my parents struggled to accept the reality of Jessica's manipulation. 30 years of conditioning had trained them to see Jessica as vulnerable and needing protection. Admitting she was the predator rather than the victim required destroying their fundamental understanding of our family dynamics. "I'm disappointed in who you've become, Amy," my father said finally. "A daughter who would try to destroy her sister out of jealousy over a house." His words broke my heart, but they also strengthened my resolve. My parents were so thoroughly manipulated they viewed my attempts to protect them as attacks on Jessica. Their judgment was compromised by years of emotional manipulation and financial exploitation. Jessica learned about my investigation through our parents and immediately escalated her own tactics. She filed a restraining order request claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous to the family. Her petition described me as obsessively jealous of her relationship with our parents and capable of violence. "Amy has been stalking me and harassing our parents with false accusations," Jessica's legal filing stated. "Her behavior has become increasingly erratic and threatening. I fear for my safety and my parents' well-being." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the same week as our housing lawsuit mediation. Jessica was attempting to paint me as an unstable aggressor while positioning herself as the protective victim. If successful, the restraining order would prevent me from contact with my own parents while Jessica continued draining their assets. But Jessica's confidence led to a critical mistake during the mediation session. When pressed by Judge Mills about her detailed knowledge of financial accounts and business operations, Jessica's anger overrode her caution. "I deserve everything because I saved this family by being adopted," she screamed. "I know about every account, every debt, every asset because it's all going to be mine anyway." Her outburst revealed information she shouldn't have possessed and exposed the calculating nature of her manipulation. More importantly, it proved she had known about her adoption for years while using that knowledge to exploit our parents' guilt and protective instincts. Judge Mills immediately recommended criminal investigation and suspended all family court proceedings pending resolution of potential fraud charges. Jessica's attempt to gain legal control over our family's assets had backfired, spectacularly exposing her crimes to law enforcement scrutiny. The truth was finally in the open, but the battle for my family's survival was just beginning. Jessica's years of manipulation had created financial damage that would take years to repair, assuming we could prevent her from completing her systematic destruction of our parents' security and independence. The mediation explosion that exposed Jessica's knowledge of her adoption and her systematic manipulation created a seismic shift in our family dynamics. For the first time in decades, my parents were forced to confront the reality of who Jessica really was beneath her carefully constructed victim persona. Judge Mills's recommendation for criminal investigation triggered immediate involvement from the district attorney's financial crimes unit. Detective Sarah Chen specialized in family financial abuse cases and had seen similar patterns of adoption-based manipulation before. Adult children who weaponize their adoption to exploit parental guilt, Detective Chen explained during our first interview. It's more common than people realize. The emotional manipulation creates a psychological dependency that makes parents extremely vulnerable to financial exploitation. The criminal investigation moved swiftly once Jessica's crimes were exposed to professional scrutiny. Bank records, security footage, forged documents, and witness testimony created an overwhelming case for prosecution. Jessica's lawyer, Marcus Coleman, withdrew from her case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client after learning about the criminal charges. But the most shocking development came when Detective Chen's investigation expanded beyond our family. Jessica's manipulation tactics were so sophisticated that the FBI Financial Crimes Unit became interested in her methods and background. We've been tracking a pattern of adoption-based financial fraud across 3 states, FBI Agent Martinez explained during a joint task force meeting. Young women who insert themselves into adoptive families exploit parental guilt, then systematically drain family assets. Your sister's case fits the profile perfectly. The investigation revealed that Jessica had been running similar schemes with other families across the region. Using online genealogy resources and adoption databases, she had identified adoptive families with successful small businesses or significant assets, then approached them claiming to be a lost family member or long-lost relative seeking connection. Jessica's adoption into your family wasn't legitimate, Agent Martinez revealed with devastating clarity. She was never legally placed through authorized adoption agencies. She inserted herself into your family during their vulnerable period of grief and convinced them she was the answer to their prayers. My parents' faces went ashen as they realized they had been victims of a con game that began 30 years ago. The baby girl they had grieved, Jessica Marie, had never been replaced by legitimate adoption. Instead, they had been targeted by a sophisticated predator who exploited their grief to gain access to their home, their finances, and their hearts. The FBI investigation uncovered Jessica's true identity and criminal history. Her real name was Angela Morrison, and she was part of a criminal network specializing in family infiltration and financial exploitation. The group had successfully victimized 17 families across 5 states, stealing over $2 million through various adoption and family emergency schemes. "She's not your sister and never was," Detective Chen said gently to my parents. "You've been raising and supporting a criminal who has been planning to steal everything you've worked for since the day she entered your home." The revelation destroyed my parents emotionally. 30 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had been given to someone who viewed them as nothing more than financial targets. Every holiday celebration, birthday party, and family milestone had been part of Jessica's elaborate performance designed to maintain access to their resources. But the criminal exposure also began my parents' healing process. For the first time, they could see how their protective instincts had been weaponized against them. Their differential treatment of their daughters made sense when viewed through the lens of manipulation rather than genuine family dynamics. "We failed you so badly, Amy," my mother cried during our first honest conversation in years. "We were so desperate to give Jessica everything we thought our biological daughter deserved that we ignored how unfairly we were treating you." My father's transformation was equally profound. His hardware store had been systematically drained to fund Jessica's lifestyle, bringing him to the brink of bankruptcy. But community support rallied around him once the truth about Jessica's manipulation became public knowledge. "We always wondered why Robert seemed so stressed about money," Mrs. Patterson from church said. "His business was successful, but he looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. Now we understand he was supporting a criminal who was destroying his family." The criminal trial preparation revealed the full scope of Jessica's network and methods. She had been in contact with other con artists who provided templates for adoption manipulation, document forgery techniques, and psychological tactics for maintaining long-term family infiltration. When Jessica was arrested trying to board a flight to Mexico with $50,000 in cash, she was carrying detailed files on 6 other families she had been targeting for similar schemes. The cash represented liquidated assets stolen from our parents' retirement accounts during her final desperate attempt to escape prosecution. During the sentencing hearing, the federal prosecutor revealed that Jessica's criminal network had been operating for over 15 years with devastating effectiveness. Families across the country had been destroyed by similar adoption manipulation schemes, with victims losing homes, businesses, and life savings to criminals who exploited their love and generosity. Angela Morrison, known to your family as Jessica. The prosecutor addressed the court, represents the worst kind of criminal predator. She weaponized love, trust, and family bonds to systematically destroy the very people who opened their hearts to her. Jessica received an 8-year federal sentence for fraud, theft, forgery, and racketeering. Restitution orders required her to repay victims across multiple states, though most of the stolen money had been spent on luxury lifestyle items that couldn't be recovered. But for my parents and me, the legal victory was just the beginning of rebuilding our family relationships. 30 years of manipulation had created deep wounds that would require time therapy and tremendous effort to heal. The most important outcome wasn't Jessica's imprisonment, but my parents' recognition of how their guilt and protective instincts had been exploited to drive a wedge between us. For the first time in my adult life, they could see me clearly without the distorting influence of Jessica's manipulation. "You're our daughter," my father said during one of our family therapy sessions. "Our real daughter who we failed to protect and appreciate. We have so much to make up for." The house that had nearly destroyed our family became the foundation for rebuilding it honestly. My Victorian home on Maple Street became the setting for new family traditions based on truth rather than manipulation, with my parents finally able to celebrate my independence and success without feeling guilty about Jessica's manufactured needs. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, our family began the long process of rebuilding trust and repairing the damage caused by 30 years of systematic manipulation. The Victorian house that had sparked our legal battle became a symbol of triumph over deception and the foundation for honest family relationships. The federal investigation's conclusion brought closure to 17 families across 5 states who had been victimized by Jessica's criminal network. FBI agent Martinez commended my thorough documentation and investigation, which had provided crucial evidence for prosecuting the entire fraud ring. "Your persistence in gathering evidence and exposing the truth helped us solve cases that had been cold for years," Agent Martinez explained during the final debriefing. "Other families will recover their assets and find justice because you refuse to accept your parents' manipulation." My father's hardware store not only survived the financial crisis, but emerged stronger than ever. Community support during the investigation created new customer loyalty, while improved financial controls and transparent bookkeeping practices increased profitability. Robert implemented strict oversight systems that prevented any future unauthorized access to business funds. "I learned the difference between helping and enabling," my father said during one of our weekly family dinners. "True love sometimes means saying no, even when it's difficult." My mother's transformation was equally remarkable. Linda enrolled in bookkeeping classes to manage the store's finances, taking active responsibility for protecting their assets from future manipulation. Her newfound vigilance extended to monitoring credit reports, bank statements, and any unusual financial activity. "We were such easy targets because we wanted to believe we were good parents," my mother reflected. But good parenting means teaching responsibility, not enabling destructive behavior. The community rallied around my parents as victims rather than enablers once the truth about Jessica's criminal network became public knowledge. Neighbors and friends who had been approached by Jessica for loans realized they had narrowly escaped becoming fraud victims themselves. Pastor Williams organized support groups at our church for families recovering from financial manipulation and fraud. My parents became advocates for other victims, sharing their story to help people recognize the warning signs of family financial abuse. "Shame kept us silent for too long," my father explained to other victims. "But speaking the truth about what happened to us helps prevent other families from suffering the same manipulation." My own life transformed dramatically as well. The expertise I gained during the investigation launched a successful consulting business helping families recognize and prevent financial fraud. Law enforcement agencies began consulting with me about adoption-based manipulation schemes and family financial crimes. "You have a unique perspective on how these crimes affect families emotionally and financially," Detective Chen said when she recommended me for a federal task force position. "Your insight helps us understand the psychological damage these criminals cause beyond just monetary theft." Speaking engagements at community centers, law enforcement conferences, and victim advocacy groups became a regular part of my schedule. Sharing our story helped other families identify manipulation patterns before losing their life savings to predatory criminals. The legal resolution extended far beyond our family's case. Jessica's prosecution led to new state legislation protecting vulnerable adults from family financial abuse. The laws created stronger oversight requirements for power of attorney documents and mandatory reporting procedures for financial institutions that detect suspicious patterns of elder exploitation. Your case became the template for understanding how adoption guilt can be weaponized by criminals, State Senator Davis explained during the bill signing ceremony. "These new protections will help prevent other families from being targeted by similar schemes." My relationship with my parents required careful rebuilding based on mutual respect rather than guilt or obligation. Family therapy sessions helped us process 30 years of dysfunctional dynamics and establish healthy boundaries for our future relationship. "We owe you so much more than an apology," my mother said during one particularly emotional therapy session. "We owe you the love and respect we should have given you all along." The Victorian house became the center of new family traditions. Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, and birthday parties took place in my dining room, creating positive memories to replace the painful associations with manipulation and favoritism. My parents' estate planning was completely restructured to reflect their actual wishes rather than Jessica's manipulation. Equal inheritance arrangements replaced the previous will that had heavily favored Jessica, ensuring fairness and transparency in all future financial decisions. "We want our real daughter to inherit what we've built together," my father said when we signed the new legal documents. "You've earned everything through your own work and integrity." Romance entered my life through Diana Porter's law partner James Richardson, who had assisted with my case. His admiration for my courage in fighting family manipulation grew into deeper feelings that blossomed into a meaningful relationship. I watched you risk everything to save your parents from financial destruction, James said during one of our evening walks around my neighborhood. Your integrity and determination were inspiring even when your own family couldn't see your sacrifice. The federal task force work introduced me to other fraud survivors who understood the unique trauma of being betrayed by family members. These relationships provided perspective and support that helped process the complex emotions of surviving systematic manipulation. 1 year after the legal battle began, my parents hosted a celebration dinner at the Victorian house to mark our family's recovery from Jessica's manipulation. Surrounded by genuine friends and community supporters who had stood by us during the crisis, I finally felt the peace and security that had been missing for decades. This house represents more than just a real estate victory, I reflected during the celebration toast. It represents our right to build our lives on truth rather than manipulation and our commitment to protecting each other through honesty rather than enabling destructive behavior. The investigation that began with a housing dispute had evolved into a federal case that protected dozens of families from financial predators. My parents had transformed from enablers into advocates while I had discovered a calling that used our painful experience to help other victim families. But most importantly, we had learned that genuine family love is based on respect and honesty rather than guilt and obligation. The house that Jessica had tried to steal became the foundation for rebuilding our family on solid ground, proving that truth always wins over manipulation when people have the courage to fight for what's right. 2 years after that devastating courtroom confrontation, I sat on the wraparound porch of my beautifully renovated Victorian home, watching my parents tend to the flower garden they had planted as a surprise for my birthday. The morning sun filtered through maple leaves that had turned brilliant shades of gold and red, painting everything in warm, peaceful light. The transformation felt miraculous. Robert's Hardware had become the most trusted small business in our community, with customers drawn not just by quality service, but by my father's integrity and transparency. My parents had paid off all the debt Jessica accumulated, rebuilt their retirement savings, and established financial security based on honest work rather than manipulation. "We should have trusted you from the beginning," my mother said that morning as she watered the roses. "You were the daughter who earned everything through hard work while we were enabling someone who was slowly destroying us all." Linda had become a fierce advocate for financial literacy and fraud prevention. Her bookkeeping expertise helped other small business owners recognize manipulation tactics and protect their assets from predatory family members. She volunteered at senior centers teaching workshops on recognizing elder financial abuse. My consulting business had grown beyond my wildest expectations. Law enforcement agencies across the country requested my expertise on family fraud cases, while victim advocacy groups invited me to speak about recovery and rebuilding after financial manipulation. The pain of our family's experience had become a source of healing for other families facing similar betrayals. James and I had been dating for 18 months, our relationship built on mutual respect and shared values rather than manipulation or neediness. He proposed 6 months ago with a ring he designed himself, incorporating a small piece of stained glass from my house's original windows. "This house brought us together," he said during the proposal. "Your courage in fighting for it showed me the kind of woman I wanted to spend my life with." Our engagement celebration took place in the same dining room where I had once eaten lonely dinners while my parents funded Jessica's extravagant lifestyle. Now the room filled with genuine friends and family who valued honesty over convenience, creating the authentic relationships I had always craved. The federal task force work had led to breakthrough legislation protecting adoptive families from infiltration schemes. Jessica's case became a textbook study for law enforcement training programs, helping agents recognize the psychological patterns that make families vulnerable to long-term manipulation. Your family's experience prevented 17 other families from losing their life savings, FBI agent Martinez said during our final case meeting. The courage you showed in exposing Jessica's manipulation saved more than just your parents' retirement. State Senator Davis invited me to testify before congressional committees studying family financial crimes and elder abuse prevention. Our story helped shape national policy protecting vulnerable adults from relatives or caregivers who exploit their trust for financial gain. Family fraud is particularly devastating because it destroys trust in the people we're supposed to love unconditionally, I explained to the congressional subcommittee. But families can heal when they choose truth over enabling and boundaries over guilt-based manipulation. Pastor Williams asked me to lead a support group for families recovering from financial manipulation and fraud. Meeting weekly in our church's fellowship hall, we helped parents recognize the difference between supporting their children and enabling destructive behavior. Love doesn't mean giving someone everything they want, became our group's guiding principle. True love sometimes means setting boundaries that protect everyone involved. My parents had become inspirational figures in our community, sharing their story with other families who struggled to distinguish between helping and enabling. Their transformation from manipulation victims to fraud prevention advocates gave hope to other families facing similar challenges. We lost 30 years to lies and manipulation, my father told other parents. But choosing truth over comfort allowed us to rebuild our relationship with our real daughter and protect our community from similar predators. The Victorian house had been featured in Better Homes and Gardens magazine as an example of how home renovation can symbolize personal transformation and family healing. The article highlighted how the house that nearly destroyed our family became the foundation for building something authentic and lasting. Jessica's imprisonment would continue for 6 more years with strict supervision and restitution requirements extending long after her release. The criminal network she belonged to had been completely dismantled, protecting countless families from similar schemes. But more importantly, we had learned that family relationships based on manipulation and guilt eventually collapse under their own weight. Only relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and healthy boundaries can withstand the challenges of real life. During Thanksgiving dinner last month, surrounded by genuine friends and family who truly cared about each other, I reflected on how much our lives had changed. The dining room that had once symbolized my exclusion from family celebrations now hosted gatherings filled with laughter, honest conversation, and authentic love. This house taught us that fighting for what's right sometimes means watching everything fall apart before it can be rebuilt properly, I said during my Thanksgiving toast. But the foundation we've built on truth and respect will last much longer than anything based on manipulation and lies. My parents had tears in their eyes as they raised their glasses, finally understanding that real family love celebrates each member's independence and success rather than exploiting their vulnerabilities. The Victorian house had become a symbol of what we could build together when we chose courage over comfort. James and I planned to marry next spring in the garden behind the house, with my parents walking me down an aisle lined with flowers they had planted themselves. The ceremony would take place where our family had learned to choose truth over manipulation, creating new traditions based on honesty and mutual respect. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in lies, I had learned during our long journey toward healing. Even when telling the truth means watching relationships fall apart, honest love eventually creates something stronger and more beautiful than what manipulation destroyed. The life lesson that emerged from our painful experience was simple but profound. Authentic relationships require courage to set boundaries, wisdom to recognize manipulation, and strength to choose truth even when lies seem easier. Family love that enables destructive behavior ultimately destroys everyone involved, while love that demands honesty and responsibility creates foundations that can support generations. As I finished my morning coffee on the porch, watching my parents work together in the garden they had created as a gift for my happiness, I understood that home isn't just a house you fight to keep. Home is what you build when you choose to love people enough to tell them the truth even when they don't want to hear it. The Victorian house on Maple Street had taught me that sometimes you have to fight for your right to build a life based on truth rather than manipulation. But when you win that fight, you create something beautiful enough to last forever. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and standing up for what you knew was right? How did you find the courage to set boundaries with people you love when their behavior was hurting everyone involved? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help other families recognize the warning signs of financial manipulation. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building authentic relationships. And please share this story with anyone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my family's journey from manipulation to healing. Remember that choosing truth over comfort is always worth the temporary pain because authentic love creates foundations that last forever.